play. Yes, Chadwick is going to play with his little ribbons here while I talk. So if you hear kind of like a jingle noise, that's what's going on. Hi everybody, this is John from DM Shower Thoughts, where we find our best selves through gaming. And today, I'm going to be continuing our breakdown of the 13 official core class subclasses by tier. And we're continuing with Wizard, so we're actually at the end of the player's handbook. Just as a reminder of how the tiers work, the tiers are ranked S, A, B, C, D, F in like descending order. There's not going to be another F tier subclass, which is so bad that it actually makes the main class less fun. And you know, there's actually not any D tier subclasses left either. The only two that really made it into D tier were the Storm Herald Barbarian and the Undying Warlock. Just because they were just kind of they just didn't really add enough to make them worthwhile. So like with the Storm Herald, it was that their damage bump was really low, and like the effects were just kind of eh. And with the Undying Warlock, it just didn't really add a whole lot. There's not a lot that you'd really use from it. It had some cool flavor, but it was so hyper-specific that it would be hard to even, unless you were doing like a really specific one-shot at a certain level with a very specific party composition, I can't really see a justification in taking it. There is the Undead, which is an Unearthed Arcana right now, which I am playtesting. I'm actually currently playing it in a Curse of Strahd game. That is heck of a lot of fun. So to kind of go back, C tier is either standard or boring, or just I can recommend it, but there are better options. B tier is usually really good. Mostly it's usually something meets B tier because it's more situational, or it's really useful, but it's just mechanics. There are better options for it. A tier, I got nothing mean to say. Solid class design. In fact, I prefer classes that have a whole lot of A tier subclasses as opposed to like one S tier and then a whole bunch of C tiers. And then S tier subclasses, they're just better. They are such good mechanics that I can always recommend them over any other subclass that you would pick. Wizard subclasses are between S and C. There's nothing so bad here that I would give it lower than a C tier ranking. The other thing is, I'm judging these subclasses from a single class perspective. We're not taking multi-classing into account. I'm looking at like the range of options that they give you. So Wizard subclasses, they don't have a whole lot. I think there's a level 2, 6, 10, and 14th level features for each of them. And so I'm going to be looking at them not only from their like early level bonuses, but also how like generally fun or engaging they are to play at each level of play. This isn't any comment on fun. Largely what we're looking at is mechanical power, or just kind of fulfilling a concept. There's been plenty of times where I've been doing these subclass tiers, and there's been a subclass that, like, if you look at any of the optimization guides, it's like usually orange or red. And I've actually been a lot nicer to those options because I think that there are specific ways you can find value in it. So this isn't any judgment on your definition of fun. This is really just my recommendations. To dive into it, Wizard has a lot of subclasses. I think that the Wizard subclasses are a little less character defining than the Cleric subclasses. Cleric has 12 subclasses, but each subclass feels very unique. Like, if you were to build two Clerics with two different subclasses, they would end up with very different stories. Wizard, kind of, it depends on the subclass. One of the criticisms I have for Wizard is I've seen players bring a few different kinds of wizards to the table, and they all kind of look the same, unless you are intentionally going against the flow. Or, like, you're trying to, like, stand out by not taking one of the optimized spells. You could have an illusion wizard that, like, that's their arcane tradition. that has like 1 or 2 illusion spells, but really focuses on, say, like Evocation. So you're a little bit rewarded for specializing, but also not really. Because wizards have this nifty little thing where they can just buy spells and add them to their spellbook, which now takes away from the idea of specializing in a specific arcane tradition. That being said, I do think the wizard subclasses have been getting a little bit more creative since the release of the Player's Handbook, but let's get into it. So our first wizard I'm going to talk about is the Evocation Wizard, and the reason I'm starting with this one is it's not the first one to show, like, alphabetically in the Player's Handbook, but it is the one that shows up in the starter set, Essentials Kit, and the SRD. So this is kind of like the generic wizard, you know? Evocation has a set of pretty cool skills. Its Sculpt spell is pretty useful. There's been times where I've seen players accidentally, or on purpose, include their party members in some kind of area of effect and damage them. But also, it is pretty neat to be able to be like, oh, I'm gonna sculpt the spell around my friend so I just hurt the enemies. There's a very cool cinematic visual that kind of comes with that. It is one of the only subclasses I feel that lets cantrips that deal saving throws deal half damage on a successful save. That's pretty cool. It lends itself to with spells like Frostbite, or any of those saving throw ones. My only issue with it is a lot of the wizard damage cantrips are attack roll based. Ray of Frost, Firebolt, Chill Touch. Those are all like you roll an attack to see if it hits. The big one I really like is the Empowered Evocation, where if it's an evocation spell, you get to add your intelligence modifier to it. So, to the damage anyway. So, I really do think that Evocation Wizard is really nice for someone that wants to play a wizard, but not a complicated wizard. And Overchannel is a pretty nice ability too. Overall, taking kind of like an inventory of all of your wizard subclass options, I think Evocation is a solid B tier subclass. I don't think it's B tier because it's situational. I think that the mechanics are solid, they make sense, they're easy, they're nice and passive, they matter. It's not like situational in that I think that you really need to be careful of your party composition to make an Evocation Wizard shine. I just think that there are some options that are more powerful. It's not boring, it's just B tier, which is going to contrast very heavily as we continue with the Player's Handbook, into Abduration Wizard. I have seen a few different wizard subclasses in play. I have seen the power level of a lot of these features firsthand. Pretty much, there have been very few wizards I haven't, like subclasses I haven't seen in action. And out of all of them, in my experience, Abduration, this is our solo S tier subclass. Every single Abduration ability I've seen has worked really, really well in play. The Arcane Ward is a perfect way of addressing the wizard's fragile survivability, kind of like Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer. I think that survivability features with squishy casters really do kind of change the game. The Projected Ward, to be able to protect your allies, preventing your allies from getting damaged, is like tenfold more important than maximizing your damage, which is why there's such a stark gap between Evocation Wizard and Abjuration Wizard. Once it has the ability to add its proficiency bonus to counterspell and dispel magic, as a DM, having been on the receiving end of that, as a player, having an Abjuration Wizard in the party, there's not really a lot that beats it. It's really nice to just be able to be like, the DM is like, I cast Finger of Death, and you're like, well, I get to add 10 to my counter spell. So I rolled an 18. Does it make it? It does. So to have that like proficiency bonus added to counterspell and dispel magic in particular, that is such a powerful ability, and its capstone is spell resistance. Not only do you have advantage on saving throws against spells, you also have resistance to spell damage. That is a nasty thing. If you're a DM and you really, really want to be a thorn in your player's side, build an Abjuration Wizard Lich. Your players are going to hate you. it's so survivable, so useful. Like, the passive abilities are the best passive abilities. The active abilities are super engaging. Abduration Wizard, solid S tier subclass. Conjuration, C tier. I don't see a lot of summoning wizards. Summoning spells are a pain in the butt right now in 5th edition. The one I think is the most cool is that if you're concentrating on a conjuration spell, your concentration won't end by taking damage. I think that's an underrated ability. I think Conjuration could be really cool. It's just that the current summoning spell loadout is just kind of undesirable. While I like it, we'll see if this one actually, if I change its rank once I get a hand on Tasha's and can see some of those spells in play. Divination Wizard is actually, I said that Abjuration was the only S tier subclass. Divination, I'm giving the A tier, which might surprise some of you because I have a lot of nice things to say about Divination Wizard. Portent is a really, really powerful ability, and even its capstone, where you get 3 portents, that's pretty powerful. My thing with it is that you have to declare portent before you know the result of the initial roll. So you have to declare, I'm gonna use my natural one that I portented before you know if the monster hit or missed, or know what the monster rolled to begin with. It's a little bit random, so you don't really get a lot of control over what's happening. And Divination is sometimes a really hard school for DMs to DM for. So they might not be very giving in terms of information because it just puts in another puzzle piece for the DM to navigate. I don't think that the school as a whole is more just generally impactful than what Abduration's kit has. Enchantment, I'm giving it B tier. Enchantment really isn't a good combat school, so I can see where in the right campaign, having Hypnotic Gaze, or having the ability to not let creatures know that you're charming them, that could be a really cinematic, impactful subclass, especially in a core intrigue game, or maybe you're playing something that's information heavy. I think that with the right party count and the right setting, Enchantment can really shine. I think that in general D&D, I just think it's a little less powerful, but I can see why it could be cool. Illusion, on the other hand, has no combat application. It's a little bit DM dependent and very setting dependent. I think there's some cool stuff you can do with Illusion. I think that there's a strong character story there. I just don't think that the mechanics are up to snuff for some of the cool stuff you can do. So for me, Illusion is a C tier subclass. It's not terrible. I can see where it could fit into a D&D story. I just don't see it being that exciting to play level to level. Necromancy is again very situational. I'm giving Necromancy a B tier. Having read over its subclass features and having heard stories of Necromancy in play, the mechanics do serve the character concepts well. It does allow you to make more zombies or whatever, and you can take over an enemy zombie. That is a really situational capstone. I think if you have the right campaign, or the DM is willing to throw you a bone, I think Necromancy could be very fulfilling to play. I feel that if your DM isn't bought into your character concept or what you want to do with it, or again, anytime you're playing a character that has access to more than one piece on the board, this goes for Beastmaster Ranger, Conjuration Wizard, it can cause a lot of slowdown if you as a player don't have strong management. You aren't very efficient with your turns. That brings us to Transmutation. Transmutation gets C tier for the same reason as Illusion. I've seen a lot of posts hating on Transmutation. I think the Philosopher's Stone you get at 6th level is a really nice support ability. I can see why it might not be super popular given how situational and flavor-based a lot of its features are. I do think that Transmutation can fulfill a character's story really well, and again, if your DM has enough buy-in, they can set you up to have spotlight moments to really add to the story of a game. Mechanically, it's not very powerful though, but again, I played with a Transmutation Wizard for a few, from levels 1 to 7, and It seemed fine. It didn't seem to detract from the subclass. It was just more like, meh. And that brings it to Sword Coast Adventurers Guide. I am going to review Bladesinger, the Tasha's version, because it has been released what the new updates are and everything. Bladesinger to me is an A tier subclass, especially if you don't follow the elf restriction, although even if you do, it's still pretty powerful. The thing that Bladesinger adds is that as an extra attack, you can change, you can swap out your attack roll with a cantrip, right? And I don't know quite if that means you can do 2 cantrips as your action, like extra attack, 2 firebolts, or if it means you can do a weapon attack and a cantrip. Looking through what Blade Singing gives you, it's pretty powerful. And I think Bladesinger is usually thought of as kind of like a magic knight, where they're a wizard class, but they're more melee based, and they've got some pretty good armor class and all that stuff. I do think that Blade, kind of like Hexblade, even though it's designed for more of a weapons character, it can work with a pure casting character. You might want to tinker around with some of its flavor. I don't think the errata really nerfs it. I think it rebalances it. So you can't blade sing as often until you get higher in level, but you can extra attack with cantrips, which is pretty powerful and fulfills some character concepts I would have loved to see when I had started playing 5th edition. Xanathar's Guide to Everything only gave us 1 wizard subclass, but it was a pretty good one. War Magic, to me, gets an A tier. Its 2nd level features are really nice. Adding to your initiative rolls, having a free reaction to bump your AC. The +4 bonus to saving throws makes War Magic a really strong multi-classing class. And again, I know we're talking mostly about single classing, I just thought I'd bring it up. Oh, while you maintain concentration, you have a +2 bonus on AC and saving throws. Your Arcane Deflection starts to deal damage later on. I think that War Magic is a pretty cool subclass. I think that, especially if you want to play kind of that warrior mage build, but Evocation and Abduration might be a little boring for you, or you just kind of want a compromise between the two. I think War Magic is pretty cool. I think that it's got a nice story to share. I think that it has some really neat options to it. And actually, the last 2 wizard subclasses come from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. You do really need DM permission to use these. Part of where their power comes from is their ability to use Dunamancy, which is like time-space magic that Matt Mercer came up with. So a lot of it has to do with, gravity and, specializing in time manipulation. So the first one is going to be a Chronologist or Chronergy wizard. So basically time magic. Chronergy gets an A tier for me. It's got very impactful and flavorful features. I'm actually really proud of Matt Mercer for a lot of his design work. I don't necessarily like every option that he presents, but in terms of the 3 options we got from Wildmount, they were pretty cool. The momentary stasis I really like. The ability to hold a spell in a bead I think is very flavorful and very functional. I can't say the same for the gravaturgist. That gets a C tier ranking from me. Again, I think that there's some great flavor there. I just don't think the features are as functional as Chronergy. There's like a push feature. There's this really funny thing at 10th level where if you see a creature take fall damage, you can use your reaction to make it 2d10 extra fall damage. That's pretty situational, though. And there is the less situational one of, oh, do you see someone hit with a weapon attack? Let's spend our reaction, give them 1d10 extra damage. That's really nice. I don't think it's the most impactful wizard feature I've ever seen. But again, it's very specific, and for somebody that wants to play kind of that extra support role, or maybe they don't, as their wizard, they don't really use a lot of reactions for whatever reason, it's a nice thing to be able to contribute and make the most of your action economy. Those are all the wizard subclasses in 5th edition right now. So that's all I have for today, everybody. Have an awesome day, and remember, game responsibly. Bye-bye now.